Aya Wilson was furious. Red-faced, visibly frustrated, and barely containing her rage, the reigning MVP couldn't stomach what had just happened on her own home court. The Las Vegas Aces, two-time defending champs, had been stunned by a depleted Indiana Fever squad, missing 6 of its key players, including Caitlin Clark. It wasn't just a loss. It was an embarrassment. But the most brutal part? Lexie Ho wasn't about to let Wilson storm off without a reality check.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
As Wilson let her emotions boil over in the post-game chaos, Ho, Indiana's defensive firebrand, clapped back with a verbal takedown that left no doubt. The Aces got outplayed, out-hustled, and outsmarted. The confrontation was brief, but sharp enough to cut through the noise of officiating complaints and sideline tantrums. Hull's message was simple. Toughness isn't just physical, and the Fever, underestimated and shorthanded, had just proved it with a win no one saw coming. What unfolded on the court wasn't a fluke. Indiana didn't sneak past the Aces. They dismantled them with strategy and grit. Aaliyah Boston locked down Wilson in a defensive performance that made the MVP look ordinary. Kelsey Mitchell and Odyssey Sims provided timely scoring and floor leadership, while the Fever's coaching staff executed a defensive scheme that forced the Aces into early foul trouble and disrupted their usual rhythm. The underdogs didn't just survive, they controlled the game. Wilson's post-game frustration wasn't entirely unwarranted. She's used to dominating, not being shut down. But the way she unraveled, both emotionally and physically, revealed something deeper. This wasn't just any playoff game. It was a power shift. Indiana's win didn't just even the series. It rattled the foundation of the league's elite. The Aces had been positioned as inevitable, a dynasty in the making. But they couldn't outmuscle the Fever, who were missing their biggest star, yet played with more cohesion, more energy, and more belief. Lexie Ho's late-game hustle, Boston's paint presence, and the team's sheer composure flipped the narrative. They didn't just win, they exposed Las Vegas. Officiating complaints echoed from the Aces bench, but there's little evidence to support the claims of bias. The Fever's win came from execution, not whistles. Strategic fouling, disciplined rotations, and relentless defense. That's what broke Vegas, not favoritism. The series now barrels into a do-or-die Game 5, with Indiana looking more dangerous than anyone expected. After a decade in playoff purgatory, the Fever aren't just back, they're making noise. And if Lexie Ho's post-game mic drop was any indication, they're not afraid to ruffle feathers on the way to a potential finals berth. Aya Wilson might have walked into this series as the league's queen, but Lexie Ho? She just reminded everyone that even dynasties can be humbled. Lexie Ho didn't just play defense. She delivered a statement, one that didn't come from a stat sheet or a highlight reel, but from her mouth, right after the Indiana Fever pulled off the most shocking playoff win of the season. Aya Wilson, the league's MVP, had just walked off the court after a frustrating, chippy, foul-heavy loss to an underdog squad missing half its roster, including their superstar, Caitlin Clark. Wilson was furious. She was animated, emotional, tossing shade at the refs, talking about how they were letting too much slide. The implication? That Indiana didn't deserve the win. And Lexie Ho wasn't having any of it. Right there, post-game, with mics nearby and emotions running high, Ho looked at Wilson and reportedly said, "We didn't beat the refs. We beat you." Let that sink in. One of the most overlooked players on the court, who wasn't even supposed to start this season, had the nerve, the composure, and the receipts to look the league's reigning MVP in the face and remind her that no, this wasn't luck, and no, this wasn't about the whistle. This was execution. And the moment landed like a mic drop. Hull didn't just humiliate Wilson. She exposed a larger truth. That no amount of regular season accolades, no history of dominance, no officiating narrative could erase what just happened. The Indiana Fever, without Caitlin Clark, outplayed, outsmarted, and outlasted the two-time defending champs. This wasn't about chaos. This was calculated. Let's rewind. No one picked Indiana to win. No one. They were battered. Down 6 players. Entering the Lions' den against a Vegas team stacked with experience, talent, and expectation. But what Vegas didn't have? discipline, patience, or the ability to adjust when the game plan didn't go their way. That's where Indiana won it. Aaliyah Boston anchored the defense like a veteran twice her age. She locked down the paint and refused to let Wilson find rhythm. She didn't just contest, she disrupted. Every shot, every rebound, every lane was met with resistance. And on the perimeter, it was Lexie Hull again, hounding passes, rotating like clockwork, and getting into Vegas's head possession by possession. They forced bad shots. They baited frustration. And they kept their cool while the Aces unraveled. Let's not forget Kelsey Mitchell, who might be the most slept-on clutch performer in the league. When Vegas made their run in the third, Mitchell didn't blink. She hit dagger after dagger, controlled the tempo, and brought calm when everything could have cracked. And Odyssey Sims, that's a vet who's been through it. Her energy, her presence, her willingness to take contact and command the offense in crucial minutes. It was the glue holding the system together. This team didn't win by chance. They won because every single player knew their role, trusted the system, and executed the hell out of the game plan. Vegas? They cracked. The Aces weren't just beat. They were rattled. The officiating complaints? That's not new. But this time, it wasn't coming from fans. It was coming straight from their locker room. Post-game, Becky Hammond, frustrated, pointed to the foul count and accused the refs of disrupting flow. But here's the thing. Indiana wanted the game to be messy. They played physical because they had to. They slowed the pace, clogged the paint, and made Vegas earn every point. The fouls weren't just part of the plan. They were the plan. And the beauty of it? It worked. Vegas never adjusted. They got emotional, distracted, focused on the calls instead of the coverage. That's coaching. That's discipline. That's strategy. And let's be real. Hull's post-game takedown wasn't just personal. It was symbolic. It marked a turning point in how the Fever see themselves, and how the league has to see them now, too. No longer just Caitlin Clark's team. This is a squad with depth, with fight, with identity. And they're headed to a Game 5 with everything on the line. Indiana hasn't sniffed the finals in a decade. The franchise was dead in the water just 2 seasons ago. And now, they're one win away from rewriting that entire narrative. Not because they got lucky, not because of a whistle, but because this team, without its superstar, found another way to win. This is what playoff basketball is supposed to look like. Adjustments, heart, strategy. Lexie Hull didn't just call out Aya Wilson for being salty. She called out the entire narrative that Vegas was destined to dominate again. And that's what stings the most. The Aces didn't get beat by Caitlin Clark hitting logo threes. They got beat by players they didn't game plan for. They got beat by execution, toughness, and a coach in Stephanie White who turned every disadvantage into a weapon. Hull's "we beat you" wasn't just a clapback. It was a truth. And it's forcing a full reassessment of power in this league. Because if the Fever can do this without Clark, what happens when she's back on the floor? What happens when that version of Indiana, gritty, confident, defensively locked in, adds one of the best playmakers and shooters in the game? This isn't just a Cinderella story. This is a signal. The era of untouchable favorites is over. The Aces may still be stacked. They may still win Game 5. But they've been exposed. They've been rattled. And for the first time in a long time, they look vulnerable. Indiana? They look ready. Ready to claim something more than just a playoff win. Ready to own the moment. So the question heading into Game 5 isn't, can the Fever do it again? It's, how far can they go? Because now the league knows. Underestimate them and they'll beat you. Disrespect them and they'll bury you. And if you dare to throw a tantrum, well, Lexie Hull will be waiting. Drop your take in the comments. Did Hull go too far? Or was it exactly the clapback the Aces needed to hear? Can Indiana close it out? Or will Vegas bounce back and reclaim their throne? Hit that subscribe button if you're living for this playoff chaos. Because the drama, it's just getting started. Game 5 is coming. And suddenly, the entire league is holding its breath. Not just to see who advances to finals, but to see if a new era is about to begin. Let's be honest, nobody expected Indiana to be here. Before Caitlin Clark, before this playoff run, before this comeback story caught fire, they were a rebuilding franchise, young, inconsistent, and frankly, easy to overlook. But now, the Fever are rewriting every script the WNBA thought it had for this postseason. And at the heart of it all, a team that simply refuses to be intimidated. That refusal was never louder than when Lexie Hull stepped into the spotlight, not just as a defender, but as a voice. In a league where MVPs usually call the shots and get the benefit of every doubt, Hull flipped the power dynamic in one sentence. We didn't beat the refs. We beat you. That line will live on, not because it was trash talk, but because it hit a nerve that was already raw. The Aces walked into the series expecting obedience. Instead, they got opposition. Let's be real, Aya Wilson is that player. She's earned her MVPs. She's earned her legacy. But that's the thing about legacy. It doesn't protect you in the postseason. Playoffs aren't about past accomplishments. They're about what you do right now, under pressure, with everything on the line. And right now, the Aces are spiraling. Wilson struggled to get clean looks all game. Every time she tried to get into rhythm, Boston was there, bodying her up, denying space, and making every move a chore. What should have been a mismatch turned into a stalemate. And when frustration boiled over, Vegas stopped playing to win and started playing angry. That's how you lose playoff games. That's how you get outclassed by a team running on belief, heart, and strategy. Coach Stephanie White deserves credit here. She didn't panic when 6 players went down. She didn't beg for excuses. She coached. She studied tape. She found advantages. And she trusted players like Hull and Sims, players who don't always get the spotlight, to do more than just fill space. They filled the void. You could see it in their defense. Every rotation was tight. Every double team came at just the right time. They forced Vegas to take uncomfortable shots. They disrupted timing. They didn't need highlight dunks. They just needed stops. And stop them they did. Now, we're sitting on the edge of something that feels bigger than basketball. Because what happens if Indiana wins Game 5? What happens if this team, with all the injuries, all the adversity, and all the doubt, actually makes the finals? Everything shifts. The power structures, the expectations, the media narrative. The Aces were supposed to be the dynasty. The Fever were supposed to be a project. But one game from now, all of that could flip. And the irony? It's not even Clark leading the charge. That's what makes this run so dangerous for everyone else. Because Indiana is doing it without their most famous player. Which means if they can do this now, they can do anything later. They've built chemistry, confidence, an identity rooted in toughness. And that identity? It doesn't care what the scoreboard said in June. It only cares about right now. This team isn't just surprising people. They're embarrassing teams who underestimated them. And nobody felt that more than Las Vegas. You could see it in the final minutes. The Aces weren't out of it on the scoreboard, but they were out of it mentally. Rush shots, forced passes, complaining to refs instead of huddling up. That's how champions lose. And Lexie Hull? She read it all in real time. That's why her comments stung. Because she wasn't just taunting Aya Wilson. She was exposing the mental collapse that had just unfolded for the entire world to see. Wilson's temper tantrum wasn't just about the refs. It was about a deeper frustration. The feeling of dominance slipping through your fingers. The moment when confidence becomes desperation. And the Fever? They never flinched. They didn't gloat. They didn't whine. They finished. That's what postseason maturity looks like. It's what separates the teams with stars from the teams with systems. Game 5 is going to be war. Not just because of the stakes, but because the Aces now have everything to prove. They're not just fighting for a final spot. They're fighting to protect their pride, to salvage what's left of the season that was supposed to end with confetti, not questions. But here's the catch. Pride doesn't beat execution. And Indiana is executing like a team possessed. Stephanie White's play calling has been surgical. The game plans aren't built around one player. They're built around exposing weaknesses. That's why Vegas is scrambling. They didn't expect to be outcoached. They didn't expect to be out-hustled. And they certainly didn't expect to be out-toughed. But that's where we are. And with every second that ticks closer to tip off for Game 5, the pressure multiplies. Vegas is still dangerous. No one's denying that, but they no longer feel inevitable. That aura? Gone. Indiana ripped it away with grit, strategy, and an unshakable refusal to lose. The Fever didn't come into this series hoping to survive. They came to win. And that mindset, that confidence, is contagious. You see it in the way they talk to each other, in the way they walk into the arena, in the way Lexie Hull stood her ground and dared to speak the truth, MVP or not. This team isn't waiting for permission anymore. They're taking what's theirs. So, now the question isn't whether the Fever deserve to be here. That answer's already clear. The real question is whether the league is ready for what comes next if they finish the job. Because if Indiana closes this out, the narrative doesn't just change, it detonates. Suddenly, it's not about Vegas's quest for a three-peat. It's not about Clark being a rookie phenom. It's about a team that rewrote every rule about what playoff basketball is supposed to look like. Resilience over reputation. Strategy over stardom. Execution over ego. The Indiana Fever are knocking on history's door. And if Vegas can't stop them, Lexie Hull's words are going to echo a whole lot louder. Not just as a clapback. Not just as a moment. But as the truth that broke a dynasty. The storylines might have started with Caitlin Clark. That was the national hook, the viral fuel. But where this team is now, that's not just a Clark effect. That's a product of system building, culture shift, and unapologetic toughness. It's every bench player who got written off. Every role player stepping up like a star. Every name that never trends online. Showing up, shutting down legends, and making actual history. And somehow, in the middle of it all, Lexie Hull is the face of this Fever dream. This is a player people laughed at when she was drafted too high. The one fans barely mentioned in pre-game conversations. Now, she's the one delivering dagger quotes to MVPs and backing them up with lockdown defense. She's not just shutting down Io Wilson on the court. She's shutting down the entire narrative that Indiana doesn't belong. Think about the symbolism of it. The reigning MVP storming off the court frustrated, and the no-name player putting her in check. Not with cheap shots or trash talk, but with the cold, cutting truth. We beat you. There's a reason that line went viral. Because it represents a shift happening right in front of our eyes. One where underdogs don't just pull off miracles. They redefine what power looks like in this league. And Vegas, they're feeling that power slip. This is supposed to be their time. Their three-peat. Their coronation. But every game they played against Indiana in this series has chipped away at that dominance. And what's left now? A team that looks shaken. Not just in their shooting percentages or game plans, but in their energy. The composure is cracking. The chemistry looks strained. And the pressure? It's suffocating. You can feel it in the way they talk about the officiating. The way they throw around words like bias and inconsistency. That's not confidence talking. That's desperation. And you know what desperation leads to? Mistakes. Emotional fouls. Rush possessions. And the worst of all, excuses. Meanwhile, Indiana just keeps showing up. No excuses. No distractions. Just execution. Their game plan isn't flashy. It's not built around hero ball or isolation. It's built on grit, containment, mismatches. They don't have to dominate. They just have to disrupt. And right now, they are the best disruptors in the WNBA playoffs. Odyssey Sims has been the glue. Kelsey Mitchell has been the flamethrower. Aaliyah Boston is a defensive problem for every team that thinks they can bully the Fever in the paint. And Ho? She's the irritant, the instigator, the player who gets in your head and gets to stop. So let's talk Game 5. This is more than tiebreaker. This is a franchise-altering moment. For the Aces, it's a fight for legacy. For the Fever, it's a shot at legitimacy. If Indiana wins, they don't just advance, they arrive. A win cements this team as more than a fun story. It makes them a real threat, not just this year, but every year forward, because what they've built is replicable. It's not just a Clark-centric offense with flashy threes. It's a system that can plug in pieces, adapt, and win in different ways. That's what makes this so scary for the rest of the league. Indiana has depth, They've got a coach who's 3 steps ahead. And now, they've got confidence. That's a dangerous combo. And don't think for a second that Lexie Hull doesn't know exactly what she's doing when she speaks up. That quote wasn't off the cuff. It was earned. It came from a player who's been pushed to the margins her whole career. From someone who's fought for minutes, for recognition, for respect. And now, she's commanding it. What happened after that game was more than just post-game tension. It was symbolic. Hull planted her flag right in the middle of Aya Wilson's kingdom and said, "This isn't yours anymore." Now Vegas has to answer. And here's the problem. They don't look like they have won. Chelsea Gray's still out. Candace Parker isn't walking through that door. Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum are incredible, but when the system breaks down, they haven't had answers. And Aya, she's been incredible all season. But in this series, she's been mortal. Not because she got worse, but because Indiana built a wall and dared the rest of Vegas to beat them. They haven't. That's why the series is tied. That's why Game 5 feels like a crossroads. For both teams, for the league, and for every narrative the WNBA's been holding on to for years. If Vegas wins, it's status quo, another dominant team escaping an upset and pushing toward another ring. But if Indiana wins, we enter a new era. The Caitlin Clark media machine will shift into high gear. The underdog team becomes a juggernaut in waiting. And every single player who carried this team while Clark was out, Hull, Boston, Sims, Mitchell, they all become household names. This isn't just about reaching the finals. It's about changing the entire conversation. The WNBA has been craving a shakeup, a reason for new fans to stick around, a reason for casual viewers to invest in storylines beyond the predictable favorites. Lexie Hull gave them one. And now, the Fever are 40 minutes away from flipping the league upside down. So let's stop pretending this is some happy little underdog run. It's not cute anymore. It's real. The Fever didn't back into this position. They've taken it by force. With strategy. With resilience. With players stepping into roles no one thought they were ready for. And with one well-timed sentence, Lexie Hull made it very clear. This isn't a league where you get to coast on your resume. Not anymore. So how's it going to end? Can Aya Wilson silence the noise, lock in, and lead Vegas to a dominant statement win? Can Becky Hammon outmaneuver Stephanie White in a high-stakes chess match? Can the champs remind everyone why they're the champs? Or does Indiana slam the door shut, take the crown, and make Lexie Hull's words echo through the league forever? You already know what we want to see. Drop your predictions in the comments. Hit subscribe if you're living for this playoff drama. And buckle up, because Game 5 isn't just a decider. It's a reckoning.